Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Hope everybody had a wonderful and relaxing holiday season. Um, so today, I thought we would talk a bit about weight restrictions and seasonal limitations, our powers with respect to these things. Now, both of these things are some of the weirder areas of law that deal with our roads. Um, but just kind of jumping into it here, talking about seasonal restrictions first. One of the things that's especially weird about this is that nowhere do they explicitly grant us this power or explicitly say what exactly it is that we have to do in order to actually seasonally close a road. Um, Here are some of the relevant authorities for you to take a look at if you are too interested in the details. But nevertheless, here you go. So it's 164.152, the barricaded road liability piece, when a town board by resolution closes in barricades for seasonal restriction or other purposes, the town board, its officers, and employees are exempt from liability. And then here, road authorities, the important one here, so it's Minnesota statute 160.16. Subdivision 3 is the one that you want to be looking at here. Road authorities may also provide by contract or otherwise for the erection of barricades, fences, or other obstructions so as to prevent traffic. So if you're keeping score in the back here, they didn't actually say that we could do this. They didn't actually say how to do it. All they really said is that you can do it by contract. You can put up a barricade, and if we do that, then we have certain civil immunities. Now, very helpfully, the barricade portion, or not the barricade portion, but the seasonal closure portion, the first one that I read to you, was passed in 1985 and has not once been interpreted by any court, never. Just so you know, if you're relying on this thing, there is just an inherent level of legal risk that comes with something that's never been touched by an appellate court. Nevertheless, we are pretty confident that this power exists, and one of the reasons for that is because the state has gone to the trouble of limiting our road money related to using this power. Now, specifically, what we're looking at is Administrative Rule 8820.200. You don't care about the details necessarily, but what they've done here is in their definition section in one of MnDOT's areas of administrative rule, they defined town road for town for finance purposes as a road that is maintained by a town and open to the traveling public a minimum of 8 months out of the year. So we've got implicit recognition of this power. We've got implicit acknowledgement that this is a thing that you can do and you can still get money from the state for it, so long as you follow so long as you follow the proper procedure and so long as you're keeping it open that 8 months out of the year. So what do we think about how you actually go about doing these things? So first, it's you draft a passive resolution closing the roads, place sufficient barricade on the road, and finally, once they dry out, you pass another resolution reopening. So the contents of that resolution are sort of derived by implication from the statutes and the rules that you saw. We want a clear description of the road. We want to know what exactly is being closed. We want an explanation of why it is being closed. So, some common rationales here were prevention of theft. If you're dealing with a hunting cabin or recreational cabin that people just are not using in the winter, that's a pretty big target for burglars. It's an easy target. If you commit a crime like that, and it's months before anybody actually detects you, that just makes it really hard to actually functionally catch anybody. It makes it really hard to deter anybody. So as a result, you can consider seasonal closures for that reason. So prevention of theft, prevention of property damage, and then of course just preservation of scarce public resources for more trafficked areas. So you've got your description, you've got your explanation, and then indicate explicitly that the road will be barricaded when that will happen, and say explicitly that the road is closed on that specific date. Now, a word about barricades. This is something that hasn't really come up in previous discussions of this topic for those of you who've been following. So Minnesota Statute 160.16, the one we discussed earlier, says the road authorities may also provide by contract or otherwise for the erection of barricades, fences, or other obstructions so as to prevent traffic from entering any impassable section. Why am I highlighting this? Because as I was preparing for this presentation, I discovered there are a couple of cases out there questioning the sufficiency of barricades. So one in particular ended up finding that the road probably wasn't closed because the barricade wasn't sufficient. Now, this is a very old case, 1955 case. Um, so, its continued vitality is potentially doubtful. Nevertheless, I try to say that we are in the business of making sure that you guys don't take legal risks by accident. So the mere fact that this is a possible thing that can happen is something that I wanted to alert you to. Um, Nevertheless, I think we've got some relatively solid guidance here, which is Minnesota's Uniform Manual on Traffic Controls. They have sections specifically. If you're curious about the details, if this is something you're potentially looking at doing, shoot me an email. I'll shoot you the citations to the relevant bits so that you know what exactly is supposed to be done. But they have guidance on what counts as a barricade. Now, as we mentioned in other presentations here, there is a law saying that all traffic control devices are supposed to conform to this thing. So I tend to think that if you are conforming to this thing, your barricade is probably legally sufficient. I think you've got a good argument that it is. So you're potentially avoiding this issue. Now, nevertheless, there is one area of legal concern that I think is worth highlighting here, and that is Minnesota Statute 163.16. As you saw, the language that we had originally, let's see, exempt from liability for any claim to injury to person or property arising from any use, recreational, otherwise, of the barricaded road. We do not know how that's going to interact with the impassable road complaint, which is a process by which 5 landowners can come to the county board and say, County Board, they are not letting me cross this road. The town road that they have is impassable for this reason, that reason, or the other reason, and can result in the county board imposing penalties on the township. Um, Nobody's tried to raise this as a defense to that, so we don't really know whether or not it's going to work as a defense. As a result, we recommend working with landowners on this thing. You're going to want to make sure that there's a broad consensus of the people who are potentially getting locked out of their property for extended periods of time that this is a good idea. This is something that they potentially want the township to be doing. We recommend that you create a new resolution every fall and that you keep that resolution in place where you can lay hands on it in the event that a dispute arises, keeping in mind that legal disputes tend to have a long lag time. So you might be looking for this thing a couple of years later. So keep that in mind with whatever system you end up using. When you pass that second resolution reopening, and the reason that you want it to be a second resolution is because you want it to be you want to show a review in court that you are paying attention to conditions on the road. You're not just doing this arbitrarily. If you're sitting here closing the thing in the spring, you want to be paying attention to when it is that it's actually safe to travel it again, or when it is that your conditions that you're worried about are no longer obtaining on the ground, and it just looks better if you do it in a second document. It looks more serious. So pass a second resolution reopening when appropriate, and then keep them together. And then the last major best practice recommendation here comes from that administrative rule. Remember that it is not a quote unquote town road for the purposes of gas tax funding unless it's navigable for at least 8 months out of the year. So if you intend to claim this thing, be very careful about maintaining that specific minding that specific rule. Okay, now for folks who are interested, we do have a sample resolution on this one. So what you're looking for is in our information library under Township Roads. You're looking for document TR 1000 and you're looking at Appendix B. Okay, seasonal weight restrictions. So, to protect all town roads during spring months, when the potential for damage is the greatest, legislature has established a seasonal weight restriction. By default, the weight on any single axle must not exceed 5 tons, and the gross weight on consecutive axles shall not exceed a factor of the gross weight allowed by law. Now, I think you'll see why it is that I said it that way when I show you the actual language of the statute. Gee, thanks, legislature. The gross weight on consecutive axles on an unpaved street or highway shall not exceed the gross weight allowed in sections 169.823 to 169.829, multiplied by a factor of 5 and divided by 9. Uh, so if you want to figure out what exactly the limit is, you're gonna be sitting there with you're gonna be paging through a statute book for a long time with a calculator in your hand. Nevertheless, we also have some powers, and our limits on these powers are really quite untested, I would say. So they come from Minnesota Statute 169.87, and the optional language is it's in the statute directly. Local road authorities may prohibit the operation of vehicles upon their roads or impose weight limits if they determine the operation of such vehicles will seriously damage or destroy the roads. Now, law that general provision has been sort of honeycombed through with some real bizarre exceptions that make enforcement really quite tricky. But okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit there. So if you intend to use this, we recommend because the statute does not lay out any meaningful procedure. I've just quoted to you most of what it says, frankly. Okay, so develop factual findings, say why it is that you're restricting, and be as detailed as you possibly can. We recommend that you enact that limitation by ordinance. So using your 366.01 power to kind of the fullest extent. Now, to the extent that we have opinions interpreting this thing, there are a couple from the Attorney General, fairly long-standing. We're talking 50s, 60s opinions, that kind of stuff. Now, of course, the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota does not make law. He doesn't get to decide what the law is. But as somebody who is a learned interpreter of the law, who publishes these opinions, courts tend to defer to these opinions if they can. So we've got some longstanding ones saying that this is supposed to be done by ordinance, and one of the ways in which it can be screwed up is if the ordinance formalities are not followed. That is, the publishing one specifically. We've got an opinion saying that a township screwed up on that basis. Now, another major area of concern here is if you try these things, you got to work with law enforcement, because the enforcement piece, it's fine to pass an ordinance, but if you don't have the muscle to enforce it, you mostly just wasted your time. So meeting with your local sheriff's department, finding out under what circumstances they're willing to do this, what procedures they'd like you to have. This is a critical piece of attempting to use this power. Now, one additional piece here, one piece that is in the statute itself, is that weight limitations are not effective without signage. Now, we talked about how honeycombed through this thing is with exceptions. So I've just pulled out a couple to give you a sense of the administrative lift that you're potentially talking about here. So milk trucks can go up to 7 tons. The default rule is 5, but they get up to 7 if they are, quote, going from the point of production to the point of first processing, and they haven't loaded any additional in the meantime. This can make an enforcement of a restriction rather difficult, because you have to figure out what exactly is being hauled, where it's going from, and where it's going to, which is not always that practical, frankly. A 2-axle or 3-axle utility vehicle that does not exceed a weight of 20,000 pounds per single axle, or 36,000 pounds gross vehicle weight for a 2-axle vehicle, or a 48,000 pound gross vehicle weight for a 3-axle vehicle, if owned by the proper kind of company that is doing the proper kind of work at the proper time. They also have those exemptions, but that's not all of them. So cargo tank vehicles, they have their own that are different than the milk trucks. Recycling vehicles, they have their own. Garbage vehicles, they have their own. School buses and Head Start buses, they have their own. Implements of husbandry, they have their own. That said, if you're worried about it, one thing to know is that bridges are special. So this is the specific language here, subject to the limitations upon wheel and axle loads prescribed in this chapter. The gross weight of any vehicle or combination of vehicles driven over or onto a bridge on any highway shall not exceed the safe capacity of the bridge. So if you're worried about that particular one, you do have a fair amount of clarity there. All right. Go ahead and stop and check out our chat here. You see that a couple of chats came in. Uh, oh, sorry, Nancy. Well, this will be recorded and up on YouTube. So if you wanna go through it, I will. You can listen to it as many times as you want once it's up there. Now, the document that I was talking about with respect to the town roads is so what you're looking at is our information library. It's document information library town roads document TR 1000. Now, the name of that one is minimum maintenance, but the seasonal restriction piece is also there. Appendix B has a sample resolution that we think conforms to best practices and also to the law around this. So this is something you're considering doing. That's a good place to start. We also have a little bit of guidance on the process itself in the bulk of the document. So if you want to take a look, that's a good place. You got any other questions here? Okie doke. Well, folks, thanks very much for your time and your attention.
I've got a few things. If you got time for them, Graham. Okay, I just want to remind I want to remind everybody that the paid leave updates are ready at the Office of the State Auditor's website. And what I'm going to do right now is give you guys a link in chat so that you can jump in there and look at that if you have not done that yet. The updates and the enhancements for 2025 and 2026. You're going to see the 2026 enhancement. When you go to the site, that 2026 enhancement is the paid leave basically and one of the fixes for it. Also, one more thing. This is an election year. It's always a township election year. So just a reminder that we're halfway through the filing period, which started on December 30th and ends on January 13th for township offices. Sorry about that. She's just been all over. Okay. All right. So, like I said, filing period, December 30th through January 13th. Filing for offices must be open for filing between 1 and 5 p.m. on the last day of filing, which is the 13th, and then another date coming up, January 15th. Candidates for the March Township elections may withdraw until 5 p.m. That's within the 2 days after the filing closes. And the next upcoming date is January 23rd. That's the last day to post a notice for the time, date, and place for absentee and early voting for the March elections. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to put in chat, I'm going to add the Office of the State Secretary of State's office. This particular link will take you to the calendar, the election calendar for townships. You get to that page, scroll down to townships. It's going to give you everything that you need, that election calendar for the next year and a half. So take that election calendar, download it so that you're up to date with what your next thing is going to be. What's the next thing I have to do? What's the next thing I have to post? What's the next thing I have to do? Be in the office or whatever. So follow that calendar. Thanks, Graham.
Thanks, Jesse. So, all right, folks. Well, hearing nothing else, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. And I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday season. Hoping that you all have a wonderful 2026. And have a nice morning.